Let's get your Kansas Hazmat review in the books. What federal regulation governs hazmat transport by road in Kansas? 49 CFR Parts 100 to 185. These hazardous materials regulations are the foundation for safety across all state lines. Next question. What state agency enforces hazmat transportation on Kansas highways? Kansas Highway Patrol, KHP. In coordination with federal PHMSA and FMCSA, the KHP manages roadside inspections and weigh station compliance. Let's move on. What endorsement permits a CDL holder to transport hazmat in Kansas? H endorsement. You must pass the written knowledge test and undergo a federal background check to carry this on your license. Next point. What federal agency conducts the hazmat endorsement background check? TSA, Transportation Security Administration. The TSA verifies your identity and background to ensure you don't pose a security risk. Let's keep going. How often must the TSA threat assessment be renewed? Every 5 years. You must complete a new assessment and fingerprinting before your current one expires to maintain your endorsement. Next question. Who is ineligible for a hazmat endorsement in Kansas? Non-U.S. citizens without permanent residency or those with specific felony convictions. Serious felonies within the last 7 years or a lack of legal residency will trigger a disqualification. Let's move on. What are the 9 hazard classes? Class 1, explosives, 2, gases, 3, flammable liquids, 4, flammable solids, 5, oxidizers, 6, toxic, 7, radioactive, 8, corrosive, 9, miscellaneous. Knowing these classes is essential for proper loading, placarding, and emergency response. Next point. What is the hazmat table in 49 CFR used for? Identifying proper shipping names, UN numbers, hazard classes, and packing groups. It serves as the master guide for how every regulated material must be handled and labeled. Let's keep going. What is the proper shipping name, PSN? The official name found in the hazmat table. Using the exact PSN on all documentation is a legal requirement to ensure clarity for responders. Next question. What must appear on a hazmat shipping paper? PSN, UN number, hazard class, packing group, total quantity, and a 24-hour emergency contact. Missing any of this information can lead to heavy fines and delays at KHP inspection points. Let's move on. Where must shipping papers be when the driver is in the cab? Within immediate reach in the seat or door pouch. The driver must be able to grab them instantly in an emergency while wearing a seatbelt. Next point. Where must shipping papers be when the driver exits the vehicle? In clear view on the driver's seat or in the door pouch. This allows emergency personnel to identify the cargo from outside the truck if the driver is incapacitated. Let's keep going. What is required of the emergency contact number on a shipping paper? Monitored 24 hours by someone knowledgeable about the material. The person on the other end must be able to provide technical guidance to responders immediately. Next question. What is Chemtrec and what is its number? A 24-hour chemical emergency response center. 1-800-424-9300. Most commercial carriers use this service to fulfill their 24-hour emergency contact requirement. Let's move on. What is the National Response Center, NRC, and when must it be called? The Federal Center. 1-800-424-8802, notified for reportable quantity releases. Immediate notification is mandatory whenever a significant spill occurs on Kansas soil. Next point. What is a reportable quantity, RQ? An EPA-designated amount that requires federal notification if released. If the amount spilled meets the RQ threshold, the driver or carrier must call the NRC. Let's keep going. What does RQ before a material name on a shipping paper mean? The load contains a hazardous substance at or above the notification threshold. This notation tells the driver that any release of that material is a federally reportable event. Next question. What are placards and what size must they be? Diamond-shaped signs at least 10.8 inches per side. These are placed on the vehicle to warn the public and responders of the hazards inside. Let's move on. On how many sides must placards be displayed? All 4 sides, front, rear, and both lateral sides. Visibility from every direction is required so the hazard can be identified from a distance. Next point. What distinguishes a placard from a label? Placards are 10.8-inch diamonds on the vehicle. Labels are 4-inch diamonds on packages. Labels are for the boxes and drums. Placards are for the truck and trailer. Let's keep going. When does a Table 1 hazmat require placarding? Any quantity, even a single package. High-risk materials like explosives and toxic gases must always be placarded regardless of weight. Next question. When does a Table 2 hazmat require placarding? At 1,001 pounds or more in the vehicle. For these materials, the placards are only required once the total weight reaches the half-ton mark. Let's move on. When is the dangerous placard used? When 2 or more Table 2 categories total 1,001 pounds. It is used when no single hazard class meets the 1,001 pounds limit, but the total weight of hazmat does. Next point. What does PGI indicate? Greatest danger requiring the most stringent packaging. Packing Group 1 is the highest level of hazard. PG3 is the lowest. Let's keep going. What is a poison inhalation hazard, PIH, material? A gas or liquid toxic when inhaled. These require specific inhalation hazard placards and have the strictest routing rules in the state. Next question. What is the URG and where must it be kept? A DOT publication for first responders, kept in the cab. The emergency response guidebook must be accessible to the driver at all times for safety. Let's move on. What does the orange section of the URG contain? Materials listed by hazard type in guide pages. This section tells you the exact steps to take for fire, spill, or medical emergencies. Next point. What does the green section of the URG contain? Initial isolation and protective action distances. It defines how far you need to evacuate the area if a toxic or water-reactive chemical is leaking. Let's keep going. What is the correct action when a hazmat leak is found during transport? Stop safely, notify emergency services, and follow the URG. Do not try to fix the leak yourself. Your job is to isolate the area and wait for experts. Next question. What Kansas-specific reporting is required after a hazmat incident? Notify the NRC, the Kansas Highway Patrol, and file a written report within 30 days. Kansas law mirrors federal requirements but emphasizes immediate local law enforcement notification. Let's move on. What Kansas-specific concern affects hazmat transport across the state? Kansas sits along major transcontinental corridors like I-70 and I-35. The KHP actively monitors these routes with high-frequency inspections at way stations and rest areas. Next point. What applies to hazmat transport of agricultural chemicals in Kansas? Anhydrous ammonia and fertilizers must comply with all 49 CFR hazmat rules. Even though it's ag, if it's on the hazmat table, you must placard and document it correctly. Let's keep going. Where is parking a loaded hazmat vehicle prohibited? Near flames, within 300 feet of bridges, buildings, and near crowds. Public safety is the priority. You must park in a way that minimizes risk if the load fails. Next question. What attendance rule applies to Division 1? 1, 1, 2, or 1, 3 explosives? They must be attended at all times. The attendant must be in the vehicle or within 100 feet with a clear view of it. Let's move on. What is the minimum convoy distance between vehicles carrying Division 1? 1 explosives? At least 300 feet. This gap ensures that an incident with one truck doesn't immediately affect the other. Next point. What hazmat route requirements apply in Kansas? Federally designated routes and KDOT-approved corridors. You are expected to use the most direct interstate routes and avoid residential areas or restricted bridges. Let's keep going. What is notable about I-70 for Kansas hazmat drivers? It is a primary transcontinental corridor with active KHP inspection points. Expect frequent checks on your shipping papers and placards when traversing the length of the state. Next question. What is a Local Emergency Planning Committee, LEPC, in Kansas? A community body that coordinates local hazmat response. These committees ensure that local fire and police are prepared for the specific chemicals moving through their town. Let's move on. What is EPCRA and how does it apply to Kansas hazmat carriers? A law requiring release reporting and info sharing with local planners. It provides transparency so that emergency responders know the risks present in their jurisdiction. Next point. What is a security plan and who must have one? A written plan for carriers of high-consequence goods. It outlines how the driver and carrier will prevent unauthorized access or theft of dangerous materials. Let's keep going. What are high-consequence dangerous goods, HCDG? Materials that could cause mass casualties if weaponized. This includes bulk explosives, toxic gases, and large quantities of radioactive material. Next question. What must a driver do if the shipment appears tampered with? Do not move, notify law enforcement, and contact the carrier immediately. Suspicious activity must be treated as a potential security threat. Let's move on. What is the compatibility rule for loading multiple hazmat classes? Certain classes must be segregated because they react dangerously. For example, acids and bases or explosives and flammables must never be loaded together. Next point. What must a driver do if asked to load incompatible materials? Refuse the load. It is your license on the line. You cannot legally transport reactive materials in the same trailer. Let's keep going. What fire extinguisher is required on a Kansas CL hazmat vehicle? At minimum, A10B, C extinguisher. You can also use 25B, C units, provided they are charged and accessible to the driver. Next question. What is the penalty for hauling hazmat without a valid endorsement in Kansas? Fines, CDL disqualification, and possible criminal charges. Hauling hazmat without the H is a major violation that will result in an immediate shutdown. Let's move on. What is the maximum federal civil penalty for a serious hazmat violation? Up to $102,000 per day, per violation. As of 2026, federal adjustments have pushed this penalty well beyond the previous $84K limit. Next point. What does a white diamond placard with a black propeller symbol indicate? Class 7. Radioactive material. This indicates the transport of materials emitting ionizing radiation. Next question. What does a red placard with a white flame indicate? Class 3. Flammable liquid or Class 2. Flammable gas. The UN number in the center will tell you specifically if it is a liquid, like gasoline, or a gas, like propane. Let's move on. What does a yellow placard with a flame over a circle indicate? Class 5. Division 5. 1. Oxidizer. Oxidizers provide the oxygen needed for other